things we have to look at is brainwashing as a way of describing people who join new religious movements.
Okay, so if it wasn't brainwashing, what was the nature of the hold that
I would see it as religious conversion, and that we have to understand that we're living in a very religious world. We were thinking a few years ago that people were going into secular society. Now we, in fact, are finding religiosity growing everywhere. Mr. Shevardnadze was baptized last week into the Orthodox Church. Religiosity is back in, and atheism is, in fact, declining everywhere in the world.
And in that search for something to believe in, people are desperate and they make mistakes.
That's right. And also in this case, I think it wasn't the people who made the mistake. Certainly, if I had a tank coming through my door, I don't know if I would be too keen to talk to the people or have someone shooting through my window. I think, obviously, the whole policing structure of the local police versus the federal police is all needs to be looked at.
But you're implicitly being a little bit quite sympathetic to David Koresh here. I mean, after all, he did have stockpiles of weapons in this place, didn't he?
But you see, in America, having weapons is nothing unusual. It's a constitutional right for every American to have a right of self-defense. And even though I personally am a pacifist, I can understand that religion in America, because of the separation of church and state, allows for a kind of multiplicity of forms to appear. So someone believing that they are the Messiah wouldn't of itself be a sign of mental illness, or it would be quite within the rationale of this type of religious grouping.
Oh, right. What would them ordering a mass suicide be a sign of?
That would be a sign of somebody who sees no way out. If that is in fact what happened, I don't know. I mean, we're still in the early stages, but certainly that's what happened in Jonestown. There was a definite order, but our friend Jim Jones was at that stage pretty psychologically deranged.
This is the South American
event in 1978. Yeah.
So in this case, you tend to see almost a logic to the way Koresh
the logic
behaved, almost a legitimacy for the way he behaved.
Well, I would see that if I was in a similar enclosed world, that if you believe that you're the Messiah and you've got to produce the goods, as it were, for your members, then you have to in some way create the goods, and that's presumably where the fire came from.
But society surely has to say to people who form these closed worlds that that kind of thing is not on. It's too dangerous, as we've seen.
Well, society is saying that, but I think society has to also ask how they should intervene. And if they had intervened with mediators, with people who knew something about this religious tradition, and possibly
which destroyed the compound. As many as 86 people are now known to have been killed. The U.S. Attorney General, Janet Reno, offered to resign after criticism of her handling of the affair. But the President said later that he backed her actions fully.
President Clinton said he approved of the strategy of the FBI and other law enforcement officials at the scene.
I was informed of the plan to end the siege. I discussed it with Attorney General Reno. I asked the questions I thought it was appropriate for me to ask. I then told her to do what she thought was right, and I take full responsibility for the implementation of the decision. Yesterday's action ended in a horrible human tragedy. Mr. Koresh's response to the demands for his surrender by federal agents was to destroy himself and murder the children who were his captives, as well as all the other people who were there who did not survive.
And the FBI's director rejected claims that the agency moved on the compound through impatience.
It wasn't impatience at all. You noted it was 51 days. It was 51 days of constantly shrinking the perimeter, constantly bringing more pressure to bear on the Davidians to come out peacefully, to come out and not be endangered at all. So that pressure and the constantly reducing ring was part of the continuing plan.
When the flames had died down, this was all that remained of the sprawling Waco compound, which became a funeral pyre for the followers of David Koresh. President Clinton's administration now finds itself in the middle of a major controversy over its decision to end the 51-day siege. U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno has said she's prepared to resign and take complete responsibility for the decision to attack the compound.
I made the decision. I'm accountable. The buck stops with me, and nobody ever accused me of running from a decision that I made based on the best information that I had.
The authorities are now sifting through what little evidence remains to try to find out why the 51-day siege came to such a catastrophic end. Officials have indicated that the blaze may have been started in 3 separate places in the compound. They also say that the fire was part of a mass suicide pact between Koresh and his followers. Several unanswered questions now face the FBI team on the case, such as why fire engines were not put on standby when they began their final assault on the compound.
Well, relatives of cult members killed in the blaze have spoken today of their anguish at what happened. Many also said they believe the tragedy could have been averted.
The families of those who died in the fire are now trying to come to terms with their grief. Many, like British man Samuel Henry, had watched in horror and disbelief as the compound burned to the ground in front of their eyes. His wife and family were among the British who were killed. Mr. Henry was critical of the FBI.
Thought they could have done better if they had thought through this thing thoroughly. They should have had at least a fire engine, at least one fire engine standing by, because people was talking
It's a difficult place to escape from. The FBI clearly miscalculated. They thought Koresh's threats of mass suicide was a bluff. At news conferences today, they insisted they had to act. Listening devices smuggled into the compound provided further evidence of Koresh abusing young girls trapped inside.
He had those fires started. He had 51 days to release those children. He chose those children to die. We didn't have anything to do with their deaths. Those fires were started in the compound by them. They were not allowed to leave, some of those who wanted to. We have some evidence. Again, it's inconclusive. There was gunfire when the fire started. There might have been people killed who were trying to get out of the compound. Yes, ma'am.
Accusations of miscalculation were also fended off by the head of the area's fire service. Appliances were not nearby, he said, because of the risk of being shot.